0 prizes will be awarded for guessing which category this one goes into, but you know what, we're going to explain it bit by bit because it is a trip. It is Armour tier list time again, with various costumes suggested by patrons and channel members. This episode is sponsored by A Bad Place to Be a Hero. Isn't the cover awesome? More on that later. More on the content of the book, not the cover. You get me. Our rating system goes thusly. I'd wear it. Pretty obvious. Pretty good. Some improvements needed, but overall solid. Fails to rise above mediocrity. Could be worse. Someone tried, just not very successfully. All the way down to everyone's favourite, just stab me now. We also have a category for not actually armour, for things which I have been asked to review, but it wouldn't be fair to review them as armour because they're clearly not meant to be. Got my appropriate merch? Let's go. Destiny 2 Witch Queen. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to review the Witch Queen herself or these guys, but we're gonna go for both, albeit briefly. The Witch Queen armor is absolutely, I'd wear it if she's a baddie. She is a baddie, right? If she is a baddie, then fantastic. If she isn't a baddie, this is a huge failure of character design because there are so many elements which make you go, ugh. Like, 1. Spikes. 2. Ugly gaping maw with spiky teeth. 3. Strange glowing eyes, of which there are 3. Not very big eyes either, at least in comparison to the rest of her. 4. Bones. 5. Enormous pauldrons. Okay, technically these are not a sign of evil, but they're really spiky too. And 6. Filth. I don't know if you've ever heard the expression cleanliness is next to godliness, but a lot of people have a really visceral reaction to stuff that looks like it's dirty. Does it look like it smells? Does it look like there are bugs? Is it just generally unpleasant? Do you want to wash your hands after looking at it? That's the kind of vibe I'm getting here. And that vibe is generally not associated with nice characters. Smelling like earth or plants or even being muddy is fine. Smelling like sewage, not so much. Anyway, like it a lot. Also, enormous moth wings. Very cool. Moving on, I have no idea who these 3 are. I assume that they are the goodies based on general design compared to these guys, but I could be wrong about that. Wikipedia tells me they are guardians. I would like you to know that I did try and read the summary of Destiny 2 Witch Queen on Wikipedia. That did not happen. I also assume that these 2 are male and this one is female. I think I'm assuming that based on the shapes, as in the one on the right has smoother lines and sort of more gently curved pieces of armor, but I don't know. I also assume that the one on the right is more stealthy than the other 2 because the armor looks to be lighter and also there's an outline obscuring cloak and hood. If you know who these people are, do let us know in the comments because I'm fascinated to know if my initial impression lines up with what they're actually supposed to convey. I definitely wear these 2. We're gonna bump this guy down to a pretty good because I'm a little bit concerned about the tightness of his skull helmet. I'm wondering if he can breathe or not. But overall they have a definite aesthetic, it fits with the world, there's a lot going on, but it's not terribly over-designed. I like them. Next up is this lady from The Last Legion, and she has no helmet. I mean, I understand why she has no helmet because Aishwarya Rai Bachchan is very beautiful in the face and you don't want to be covering this up. I understand, but whatever. She also looks familiar. Was she in Bride and Prejudice? Yes! Okay. I do like that they decided to put the armor on under and over her usual outfit. This speaks to me of a character who is practical, who carries her armor around with her in case she has to mix it up, but she doesn't wear it all the time. But if she does have to wear it, we take off the cloak and the corset thing, we put the armor on, we put those 2 things back on over the top, done. The corset thing is clearly soft leather, but that works for me because it's obviously meant to be a belt kind of arrangement, which is holding some of the weight of that scale shirt. Which means I don't really mind that we have an additional lower slung belt. That second belt wouldn't help at all with the distribution of the weight of the scale shirt, but it's useful for carrying weapons, so that's fine. The scale is very shiny, and I do have a deep soft spot for scale mail, even if it's not always the most practical thing. The terriers are obviously soft and flappy, which isn't ideal, but you know what? I guess they were going for a Roman Legion kind of vibe. The movie is called The Last Legion after all, right? The thing that looks weird about it is that they're kind of mixing eras of Roman Legion armor. It's kind of, not really sure. I mean, I'm not really looking for or expecting historical accuracy, but the leather terriers over a metal mail shirt aren't really going to provide any extra protection, are they? Really? The point of terriers is to provide some measure of protection for areas which need to move a lot, which is why you see them at the shoulder and also on the thighs. They're generally made of thick, stiff leather, but they're also short. The fact that Xena used them as a skirt which was too floppy to be protective but too short to be actually really referred to as anything other than a miniskirt is really besides the point. The overall look is interesting, like they threw 5 different design philosophies together and just called it good, but it's shiny and fun and I like it, but I would love to give it a pretty good, but I think we're gonna have to go for could be worse because there's so much to like about it and someone clearly tried, but it's just not quite working. While I was writing this, I was a little bit worried that my patrons were just sending me things that they kind of liked, that they thought were, you know, at least reasonable. But then I got to my next request, which was Camilla from Fire Emblem. Oh, you kids do spoil me. 0 prizes will be awarded for guessing which category this one goes into, but you know what, we're going to explain it bit by bit, because it is a trip, and hopefully an educational one. We're going to start with the thing that stood out to me, which is the axe. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Jill, surely there are other things which stood out to you more, but no, we're starting with the axe, because the axe, aside from being extremely oversized, says to me, this character has to fight in melee. This isn't like a sexy warlock who can dunk on you from 120 feet away with Eldritch Blast. No, she has to fight in melee with that thing. This would still be a daft outfit for a sexy magic user, if only because of the chafing, but you could have much more easily got away with cleavage for days if you hadn't decided to encase her boobs in metal. Why? But you know what? Let's take it from the top. Instead of a helmet, our character has what looks like metal cat ears? Okay. She also has tailbone length lavender hair, which is just flying around everywhere, and I can only imagine the amount of hairs she is going to individually pull from her scalp when they get caught on various pieces of that segmenting metal. That is another good reason to avoid metal if you're going for a sexy sorceress kind of design, especially if you have the long flowing hair. Just throwing that out there. I weep your scalp, Camilla, I really do. The teeny cape is fine, I guess, but that and the random strap between her breasts just seems to be there to draw attention to the cleavage. She is going to be so very, very uncomfortable in what looks like unlined black and gold metal directly encasing her entire torso. The cuirass is, you know what? I really like the black and gold. That's nice. It's hilariously low cut and so tight that she wouldn't be able to breathe, but anyway, at least it looks like it's segmented, and there is a hip flare at the waist so that she can bend from side to side. So you know what? Credit where it's due on both of those. Lower arms have vambraces on them, and the vambraces have big holes in them. If you get something caught in that vambrace by accident, you are going to dislocate your elbow or dislocate your shoulder or break your arm. Something really bad could happen. There seems to be a lot of segmentation on the back of her arms, which is fine, although, I mean, you don't really need a lot of movement here, but I guess you could continue it down there for extra wrist mobility, whatever, that's fine. And we don't really have gauntlets so much as we have purple gloves, but sure, dealer's choice. Is that a metal G-string? Or perhaps a metal thong? Metal knickers. Underpants made of metal. Honestly, the mind boggles. Moving on. These giant chunks of metal on her thighs are impractically large, I think, and also they're kind of oversized compared to the rest of her outfit. I see what they're going for with the thigh protection, but they just remind me of the logo for one of those disgusting energy drinks. I'm not seeing things, right? This looks like the Monster logo. The purple cloth stuff is fine, although she could probably have used some of that on her body rather than as historically inspired decoration, but whatever. Then we have some leg armor equals stockings stuff going on. Again, nothing underneath the bare metal, which is attached apparently directly to her legs. That's gonna be sweaty. Some comically oversized polines on her knees, but whatever at this point. And of course, very high heels. The shape of the heel isn't actually that bad. It looks somewhat Victorian, but it's way too high for doing anything. You can get away with a heel of a couple of inches if you're a cowboy or something, but like, something like this is just not going to be practical on the battlefield. The thing that baffles me about this is that clearly the person who drew it knows something about armor, or has at least seen some historical armor sets, because the segmentation and that little flare on the cuirass both say, I have seen armor before and know how it works. Or at least I've seen armor before and think that this looks cool. But overall, wow. Lady, people might be staring at your boobs, but they're aiming for your heart and there is nothing there to stop them. Just stab me now. I'm not quite sure where this picture comes from, if it's the same game and a different outfit or whatever, but it definitely says, I want to look hot but intimidating for my ceremonial appearance. Even if she does have an incongruously maternal expression on her face. This is obviously ceremonial because of the giant cloak and the scepter, and you can't see the metal underpants, and she doesn't have bare upper thighs, and given the different context, it just looks less ridiculous. Still ridiculous, but not nearly to the same degree. Next, Nausicaa. I'm taking as my reference pictures this and also this. Regular viewers of this channel will be vastly unsurprised to know that I have neither seen nor read this. This is the same problem that I had when I asked about Doric from Dungeons & Dragons, because a lot of people said, oh, that's Sophia Lillis who was in Stephen King's It, and also I am not okay with this. I've never seen the former, and I'd never even heard of the latter. The latter is on Netflix, so that's probably why I've kind of given been up on Netflix. I don't have Disney Plus now either. But anyway, I really like Nausicaa's flight suit. I don't think it counts as actually armor, but I think it's really cute and practical and nice. I like the color, I like the design, I like the sort of helmet thing, I like the hat, and I like the goggles. Goggles, very useful for when you're flying and don't have a windshield. I'd wear it even if it isn't really armor, honestly. The thing I love about her scale mail shirt is that it's magic, which I know because it says so right there. That's cool. I would also wear that one because it's kind of stealthy. It goes on under the rest of her outfit, so it's like a secret magic item. I love it. Before we get on to our last armor set of the day, stop me if you've heard this one before. This episode is sponsored by the time a werewolf, a necromancer, and a barkeep had to solve a crime they didn't commit. I guess technically they did commit the murder. Well, not all of them committed the murder, but there was a murder. You know what? The book is a mystery. They have to work these things out. The book is A Bad Place to Be a Hero by Jerry F. Westinger, and I read it and I loved it. It's fantasy meets noirish murder mystery, and it's short and pacey and it's fun. And if you like it, which I hope you do, there is a sequel as well called A Bad Time to Meet the Family, which I'm currently about halfway through. Links in the pinned comment if you want to buy A Bad Place to Be a Hero to read or listen to. Highly recommended. But now, my friends, I find that irony is a blade that cuts he who wields it most especially. Zank the Paladin from Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. I mentioned in a previous short that I went to see the movie with cautious optimism but low expectations, but it was actually very fun. Chubby Dragon. Saw the Chubby Dragon, immediately thought of my DM. Just that kind of movie. Zank is a paladin, which means he wears lots of armor. So much armor. Clankety clank. Many minuses to stealth. The armor includes a muscle cuirass, and the armor looks really fun, but apparently he couldn't really sit down in it or perform the moves for his fight scenes very effectively, so there's that. The thing is, armor like this is going to be heavier than just wearing regular clothes, but there's no reason that it has to be so restrictive that you can't sit down or move properly. I mean, clearly he can sit on a horse, but you know, you should also be able to sit in a chair. I love the very D&D look of it. I love the mail shirt that's underneath. Fabulous. The embroidered blue tunic, amazing. And the fact that it slightly looks like it's made of plastic is just completely in keeping with the tone of the film. Based on looks alone, it's pretty good, because that cuirass is clearly too long and those shoulder pieces just look a little bit off. But given how impractical it was to wear, I think we're going to have to bump this one down. And it pains me to do it, but we're probably going to have to bump it all the way down to could be worse. Because if you can't move in it, it doesn't really matter how cool it looks. And that's especially true because it didn't need to be unsit-downable. You could have added some waist segmentation for that cuirass or just made it a little bit shorter. You could have changed the cut of the armholes so that you could actually swing a sword properly. You could have changed the design of the pauldron so that they covered over what was going on at the armpits. Someone clearly tried, and it looks nice and appropriate for the movie, but so close. So close. Could be worse. Actually, my friend Zach did a whole video on that armor and how you could slightly redesign it to make it more practical for the person who's wearing it. I will link that in the pinned comment as well if you're interested. This concludes our romp through armor sets for the day. If you want to pick up a copy of A Bad Place to Be a Hero, links are in the description and the pinned comment. Otherwise, I will see you next time.